This event tonight is actually an expression of our desire to have better control over the food that we're eating, and it's a wonderful panel we have here today. We have 5 women, and I'm going to introduce them to you shortly. And I'd like to also thank Kokua Market for hosting this together with Seeds of Truth. So before we get started with any further introduction, I'd like to just have Lynette Larson come to the front here. She's the general manager for Kokua Market and has been very generous in hosting various events together with Seeds of Truth. So Lynette, can you come please over here? Share a few words with us. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it just strikes me as I come here tonight with our small but intimate gathering is that probably this wasn't too far different from how Kokua started 43 years ago, when a small group of residents decided that they wanted more control and better control over access to their food. So 43 years later, and probably right now close to 4,500 community members, with 600 new community members investing in Kokua in the last 3 years. I think whoever started it built something very sustainable for us. But also it strikes me and we're working with small groups, is that you often wonder, what can a group this size do, or what can one farm in Pohohoku do on Molokai to help sustainability in our issues. It's just like how Kokua starts. It's not that the 6,000 that invest, it's that one person who makes that decision and makes one small choice, and then when the group makes a choice, then something bigger happens. But then also I think it's important for us, talking from my retailer's hat about sustainability and growing our own food. Many of you are probably aware that there was recently, over the last few months, a slowdown in the shipping system. So there's a slowdown on the mainland that affected us, and it wasn't as drastic as the major shutdown and strike that many years ago, but what we found was that our shipments were delayed 3, 4, and 5 days. And I can tell you, when I went to our back storage spot, you could see, and it really did strike me, that as consumers, if we don't continue to engage with the likes of this panel here, that it can get to be a scary situation. So I thank you all for coming tonight. Thank Melissa, and I just am looking forward to a great discussion.
We have 5 speakers today. Unfortunately, Jan Roney from Molokai wasn't able to come. She's the rancher who provides many of the meats to Kokua Market. She took ill, so she is not here today, but Allison will be speaking on her behalf and on behalf of the ranch. So I'd just like to introduce all the panel members to you, and we'll actually have them come up and speak in the order that they're sitting, if that's okay with you. Each one of them has a unique quality. They're not necessarily in farming, but they're all very concerned about food. And I myself am not a gardener, I'm a beekeeper. So I do my part, raising butterflies and worms and bunnies and bees, to contribute and give back to my community and to my neighborhood. And so these ladies, with the things that they're doing, are also giving back to the community. And so we're going to hear from each one of them. Each one will speak for about 15 minutes, and then afterwards we'll have all of you share your questions. So we only have one microphone today, so if you want to ask a question, please come up at the end and pose your question at that time. So to my left here, I have Penny Harmeyer. She is a beekeeper, and her husband Ken has worked together with us in various panels to talk about the plight of the bees. And so she's going to share from a woman's point of view, where she assists her husband in gathering swarms and taking care of bees and harvesting honey. And this is Penny Harmeyer. Then we have Allison Woltunsky, who is from Pu'uʻohoku Ranch on Molokai. And she has been there for about a year and has a lot of experience in organic farming. So we're very graced to have her here today to share her expertise. Then we have Kai Hinson, who is a farmer and is co-owner of Green Rose Farm in Waimanalo. She is a member of the Farmers Union, which is the alternative to the Farm Bureau. And she's going to share a little bit about her experience on the farm as well as being part of Farmers Union, which is an organization which I encourage all of you to join, even though you're not a farmer, to support this group in providing an alternative solution to farming rather than just going with big farming and industrial farming. This is the way we have to go in the future, where we have many, many small farmers, young people who are encouraged to get out there and start working the land again rather than sitting in the corporate chair and hoping that they will become millionaires. So then we have Catherine Sheehan, and she has run for office. She is the head of the Pacific Alliance to Stop Slavery and has been very much involved down at the legislature and at City Council talking about our homeless problem as well as human trafficking and labor abuses. So I hope she'll be talking about that today. And then we have Juanita Kawamoto Brown, who is the head of the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party. And she has been very instrumental in bringing information out to the members of the Democratic Party about how important it is to label GMO. And with her knowledge, she's actually able to convince many of the people who knew nothing about GMO before the importance of labeling as well as avoiding pesticides and GMO products. So each of these women will share in turn, and I really thank you all for coming today. I think this is going to be a really exciting evening, so thank you. So I'd just like to start with Penny Harmeyer, and let's have Penny come up to the mic and share her expertise.
My husband and I have been beekeeping for 11 years. My focus, though, different than his, is I'm doing the educational side. Here in Hawaii, or on Oahu, it's the Punahou kids that get the chance to learn about beekeeping. Well, I'm going to open up my bees to Kalihi and Pearl City, Waimanalo, and anywhere else that the kids want to learn about beekeeping. I was very fortunate just recently. I have hives in Pearl City on some of Kamehameha land that another person I know owns, or she's leasing. And I had 8 children from the age of 3.5 to 11.5. We were able to raise money to get bee suits. So 3 of them at each time got to go out and see the bees. Our little 3.5-year-old, she was the best. She was not afraid. She wanted to get closer to those bees. She says, "Auntie, lift me up. I want to see the queen." And she was just awesome. And that is my thing. I am a grandmother. I have 4 great-grandchildren. And I mean, not great-grandchildren, but they're wonderful grandchildren. And that is my thing. I want to just grab every child and take them, put them in a bee suit, and show them what the bees can do. They already know that they can eat honey with their peanut butter. They know that they can see the bees go from flower to flower. And most kids understand that. We've got wonderful movies out there that aren't quite as politically correct or actually accurate, because in a hive, who knows who the worker bees are? Are they male or female? Come on. Yes, they're female. Men, sorry to tell you guys, you are only there for procreation, and not even for that hive. You are for the other hives that are out away from us. But you also get a very great little opportunity if you're a drone. You're going to be in that hive, and they're going to just stay there with you, and they're going to feed you. But you know what? If there's a time of famine, you're going to be the first to go. So that's the situation. So it's really funny to work with kids, and you've got boys and girls, and the boys are like, "Well, what do you mean?" And we're like, "Yeah, you're not going to be around. We're going to be around. You're not." But that's not very nice. But we all work together on that. My husband and I have been doing this for over 11 years, and we are not in it to make $1 million. Like she was saying, that doesn't happen. If you have a lot of hives, it does. But we are dealing with a varroa mite and a small hive beetle. Small hive beetle is half the size of our black ladybugs, and what happens with those, they get into a hive, they can destroy a big hive in less than 2 weeks. So that is a big problem. We don't do anything with pesticides. We are totally pesticide free. We do everything organically. We use oil traps in our hives that The bees have learned to herd the beetles into the traps, and the beetles die. So that works out for us. We also put special mesh bottoms so that when the larvae falls out of the hive, it falls to the ground. We also have our hives at least 2 feet off the ground, so they can't get back into the hive. So that's ways that we're mitigating the problem. In Hawaii, that is the biggest problem that we're having right now. People say the varroa mite is bad, but not really. Not as bad as this beetle. We have hives in different parts of the island. We are actually fortunate to have hives on Kualoa Ranch. It's like the first hives on their ranch in over 20 years. And they're doing a farm-to-table situation there at their restaurant, so our bees are the ones pollinating their fruits and vegetables. And one other cool thing that they grow there, they grow loofah. Do you guys ever seen a loofah? That is so cool, but you've never seen it on a vine, I bet. I did about a week ago, and that was the neatest thing. So what they're doing there at the ranch is they're taking them, slicing them up, and putting soap in them, and then they're selling them at the store. But I don't know what else to tell you about our bees. Our bees are just my babies. I'm also a photographer, so there's a slideshow going on. It's just some small stuff. It's nothing fancy, but that's my passion over there, is just the bees. And like I said, the children. We have currently 15 hives. We have them in Wailua, Waianae, Kualoa Ranch, Moanalua, which is where I live. And I bet you don't know, we have 6 hives on our lanai right now. They're waiting to go to farms. But what we do is we go and catch swarms out of people's trees, and then we bring them home. We keep them at our house for about 2 to 3 months, make sure that they're strong enough, and then we'll move them out to a farm or someone's house if they want them. We actually have a hive at our house right now. We're working with another group from Hawai'i that's going to go out to a community center. So there's this beautiful bee box. One of my friends, her name is Pam, she painted it. So it's got all these beautiful flowers on it. It's gorgeous. My boxes are just white. Boring, but hers are just gorgeous. But that one is getting ready, and I was just watching them today, and they're just going in and out. And in a small hive like that, there's probably 20 to 30,000 bees. In a regular large Langstrom hive, which has 20 frames in it, there's over 60,000 bees. So the other things that we do, like I said, we go and collect swarms. We did a swarm last night in Wahiwa. There was a lychee tree, and there was a ball of bees, literally this big, that we captured. And we put them in a nuke and we brought them home. Well, today it's been rather warm. So they were outside of this nuke, and they were doing what they call bearding. It's they're hanging off the edge because it's too hot inside, because they regulate the temperature inside by having more or less bees, and then, of course, fluttering their wings. So that is the background for us. And as far as for pollination, we, like I said, invite people through Craigslist and through word of mouth to have bees on their property. We will maintain them, and in that way, and they can have the pollination in their home. And then it takes a long time for the bees to actually produce the honey. It doesn't happen overnight. 1 teaspoon of honey takes 10,000 bees at least one trip. So that's an awful lot of moving around. Even though you've got 60,000 bees, so 60,000 bees, 10,000 trips, so what is that? I mean, it's going to be 10,000 of them make 1 teaspoon. So you're already getting 6 teaspoons a day? That's not a whole lot of honey. And that's one of the misnomers that people think. When we go capture the swarms, they think, oh, you're going to get all this honey. It's a 50-50 chance that we even get to keep the bees with us, because they are wild animals, and they say, okay, it's like us. If you move into an apartment and you don't like it, the neighbors are loud, they're going to say, I don't want to stay here. And we have that happen on a regular basis. And that is why we only have 15 hives, not 50 hives. But with the problems that we have with these pests now, we used to check the bees every 3 months. We now check them every 2 to 3 weeks. And that's really a lot of work when you're thinking about it, where our hives are. Waianae and Kualoa and, all over the different parts of this island. So I don't know what else to really say. I'm not very good at this, guys. I'm only passionate. That's just me. So that's, if you have any questions, you could talk about it later. There's rules. I mean, anybody can have a hive in their yard as long as it's 10 feet away from any habitable structure. But you also have to be careful of your neighbors. We have a particular neighbor where we live that tried to claim that our bee stung their dog. Well, I'm sorry. We live in Moʻiliʻili Valley. Our hive is not the only hive in that valley. So that's one of the problems that you come upon when you want to have bees. But the more bees that we can save, the more important it is. We also, unlike the mainland, we cannot import bees. So the bees that we have here on island are all we have. They came in 1854 on ships, and they are survivors. We have Caroleans, we have Italians, and we have Germans. Germans tend to be a little bit cantankerous. My husband had a hive like with Germans, and he literally had to wear a hoodie under his bee suit to keep him from getting stung because they didn't like him disturbing their home. But they are survivors, and they're great pollinators. The Caroleans and Italians tend to be the ones that'll pack away the honey, and they're quick, and they're very good. And I don't know, we just have fun every day going out, taking care of the bees. It's a hobby, but yet it's become a lot more work. Like I said, with the pests that we deal with, we put in the hives these troughs that have vegetable oil in. They have a grate on top of it. The bees have actually learned to herd the beetles into those, and they drown. So that's why we have to go and change them periodically, well, actually every 2 to 3 weeks. The other thing the bees have learned to do on their own is that they will build walls with comb, with wax, and they will herd the bees in and close it up. So they are making beetle jails all by themselves. So they've realized, these guys are a problem. The other thing is the varroa mite, which is years ago, that was what was the big thing in 2007. Those are inside with the baby bees. So they are born with the bee. So they are born on their backs, and they're sucking their blood like a vampire. And that's not good. But the bees have actually learned to groom each other. And that's another way. And also, different places like UH are trying to create new strains of bees that can also be more feisty, I guess, and they're trying to learn how to get the right bees together that can fight off these pests. And every time you think about these pests, the bees, like I said, I said 2 weeks that this beetle can kill a hive that's got over 60,000 bees. It won't necessarily kill them. It will make them move. But that's still difficult because here we have so much construction, and you have these bees swarming at the weirdest times. They never used to swarm early in the year. They've been swarming all year round now. And that's because of all of the different buildings that's going on everywhere, the construction. And we have found that to be maybe the last 2-3 years. Before, it used to be April to June. And then again later in the year, about August, September to November, somewhere around there. But now it's just all the time we're getting phone calls. We also get phone calls from people that have bees in their walls. And we're currently trying to get legislature together. We're getting information together to start with it, to put a bill up that says that if you have bees in your house or on your property, to call a beekeeper first before you call the pest control people. Because we don't want to kill them. We can't, we just can't afford to. If all the bees in the world went away 3 years from now, you wouldn't be eating much but potatoes and grains, and that's really not what I like. I like my strawberries. I like my lilikoi. So, that's kind of how I feel, and it's just something really important. I also have started a group. It's called Waiʻiliʻi Beekeepers. So obviously, as the name says, it's for girls, but anybody can join in. But I want to get that going. I actually have a full-time job, so it's kind of hard. But what I want to do is get more people involved and have just a hive, maybe, in your neighborhood, not necessarily at your house, but somebody's got property somewhere that you could put a hive and you get another group of ladies together or people together and start. As soon as we get, we keep getting more and more hives. When they swarm and they go out and they make feral hives, we're better off. Because managed hives are good, but we need them out in the wild, because then they can help fend off things on their own. And that's another process that's going on too. Because we lost probably over 90% of our feral hives in 2007 for the varroa mite. And now, so that's why we are all so adamant about, don't call the pest man, just call us. It's just one of those things that we want done. So anyway, that's me.
Okay, thank you so much, Penny. I know it's a terrifying experience to do public speaking, but at some point you get over it. So anyway, thanks so much for sharing with us, Penny. I'm also a beekeeper, and I'm not going to take too much of your time because I've already spoken about bees quite extensively, but what I'm finding where I live is that the bees are swarming a lot, and I believe it's because it's a residential area, they're reacting more to the Roundup and the pesticides that are being sprayed in backyards. So we're complaining about the neonicotinoids, which are seeds which have been coated with pesticide, which we knew from the very beginning, and as did the chemical companies from the very beginning, that these seeds would kill the bees because systemically they've already got the pesticide in them. So when that plant becomes a big plant, then those bees take the pollen, they alight on the leaves, and they become infected or affected by that pesticide. So the Roundup is affecting them, all the chemicals. If you're out on a day walking by the stream and you can take a whiff of some kind of chemical, just that little bit can affect you. And some of you are young enough to remember when they were spraying DDT from trucks. So back then we thought it was just a fun thing, and I've seen pictures where people actually are dancing in the sprays of the pesticides coming out of the backs of the trucks, or actually being doused with a chemical as they're eating. And this was DDT, which eventually got banned. But we're dealing with new kinds of chemicals, new kinds of pesticides today, and they're all harmful. You can never dilute any chemical enough to make it harmless. And until we get to the point where we understand that we have to go organic if we're going to survive as a planet, then we're long lost. And if the corporate agriculture is going to continue to say, we're following instructions, we read the labels, we instruct our employees what to do when they're using the chemicals, as long as you buy into that, unfortunately, we're going to continue to suffer from pesticide poisoning at some level. So I'm very concerned about what's happening to the bees. I see my bees leaving, just like you said, at any time. If it's too hot out like it was last year, they just take off. Even if you've been taking care of them, treating them, inspecting them, not putting any chemicals in their hives, they still are very temperamental, and they say, we're out of here. So one day you may have 5 hives, the next day you may only have 2. And this is an unfortunate situation right now, but this is what we're dealing with worldwide. So I'd like to bring on the next speaker. Her name is Allison Watunski. She is from Hoku Ranch on Molokai, and she would like to share with you her experience as an organic farmer there on Molokai. Thank you.
I'm still in shock hearing that I'm not going to make $1 million farming. Just kidding. So thank you. My name is Allison Watunski, and I'm one of 2 farm managers at Hoku Ranch on Molokai. My co-manager is over there, Bart DiFiore. So actually, Bart and I have been farming together for a couple years now, and I thought that I would talk a little bit about my background farming, and then maybe at the end you guys will have some questions for me. So I actually started farming about maybe 7 years ago at an organization in Massachusetts where I'm originally from called the Food Project. And the approach with the Food Project is a little bit more of a social justice agriculture organization, and that's where most of my experience has come from. So Dr. Yi was really nice in saying that I have a lot of experience with organic farming, but the majority of my farming background is definitely through the lens of social justice and food distribution, maybe even more so than actual production, although that's what I'm doing now. So the Food Project is a pretty unique organization. The work that they do meets at the intersection of youth, food, and community. So basically, farming at the Food Project is a vehicle for creating social change. So the easiest way to explain the work that they do and what I did there for 5 years is mostly by hiring teenagers to work on farms. We would bring together groups of youth that kind of under normal circumstances would normally never meet. So youth from a variety of different backgrounds. The commonality was that they were all working together on a farm. So they would work together. It was a paid job through the summer and the academic year for about half the day every day. And then in the afternoon, they were in a social justice and sustainable agriculture curriculum. So the idea was that we would bring together people that would normally never meet, have them together working, doing something that they otherwise would never do, had never done before, in this case farming, and then kind of talk about all the things that come up when you have a really diverse group of people working together in an intimate environment. So part of my job was facilitating those programs and teaching those workshops on the farm. So we talked about all different kinds of things, from gender issues to sexual identity to poverty to food security, all different kinds of things. So I worked at the Food Project doing that type of work for 5 years on both really small urban farms and pretty big for that area rural farms, anywhere from like 1/4 of an acre to 30 acres. We did not have an organic certification, which is something that's actually pretty interesting with my background in Massachusetts and the farming culture there versus what I've noticed in Hawaii. So did not have an organic certification. The organization obviously still exists and they don't have a certification, but definitely, I'd like to think better than, the organic certification requirements, very sustainable practices. So I worked there for 5 years, and then I really wanted to focus on farming, sustainable farming, and Bart's family owns a farm. They have one of the few remaining family owned and operated farm stands just north of Boston, and so I worked there for 2 years helping him on the farm, and then we ended up here in Hawaii. So we've been here for about a year and a half. I'll tell you a little bit about Puahoku Ranch. It's a 14,000 acre cattle ranch. The farm is like a small farm on a big ranch, so we're about 30 acres. We are like a 3-person team. It's me, Bart, our coworker Keoki. Our main crops are vegetables, fruits, and ava or kava. We don't have like 30 acres in production. We have about a 5-acre, 1-acre veggie block rotation going on. So at any given time, we have about 2 acres in vegetable production. We have about 4 acres in fruit production. We grow, a variety of citrus, avocado, mostly bananas, and then we have about 4 acres of ava in production. So it's a very big piece of land, very small in scale farm. At Puahoku, we do have an organic certification and a biodynamic certification, so we have both of those going on. So transitioning from a 4-season climate to a subtropical climate in Hawaii has definitely been a really fun challenge over the past year and a half. It's been really cool. There's a lot of different variables that Bart and I deal with versus in New England, and some of the same. I think that we thought it was going to be, pretty easy to grow food when it's warm all the time. That's definitely not the case. There's a lot of other variables that we deal with. So it's been a really fun learning experience doing that. My focus area on the farm tends to usually always be drawn to distribution. That's what I'm really interested in. I care a lot about who's getting our food and where it's going. And our work on Molokai has been pretty focused on making sure that there's a more secure food system there. So making sure that our food is staying on island and then within the Hawaiian Islands. So the majority of the food that we grow stays on the island of Molokai, other than shipping to Kokua is really our only off-island vendor, so here in Honolulu. We're pretty small scale in our distribution. We sell at the local farmers market on the island, where the ranches were pretty far removed. We're about an hour from the main town of Kaunakakai, so we sell there once a week. We have kind of a very small, informal CSA program, mostly friends that live along the way that we deliver produce to. You can rent cottages, and we have a hospitality unit at the ranch, so the majority of our produce stays there for that hospitality unit, so folks that are staying on the ranch can have the option of buying produce because it is about an hour to the nearest store. So pretty small scale in that way. There was not much of a farm program when Bart and I first came to Puahoku, so we've built this up over the past year and a half, and it's definitely evolving. It's not set in stone where it is, so we're always happy to add on new clients like Kokua, which has been really great for us because it enabled us to kind of stabilize our sales. One of the challenges when you're providing the majority of your food to like one market, like our hospitality unit, is that when we would have dips and things like that, we need other places to sell all the food that we have. So Kokua has been a really great, stable, and consistent market for us to do that. I don't know much about our beef and livestock operation, which is what my coworker Jan was going to speak about, but if there are questions at the end in regards to that, I'm happy to attempt to answer. Our beef does have the same organic and biodynamic certification when it's raised on the property because of legalities around slaughterhouses. There are no organic certified slaughterhouses in Hawaii, so once the animals are processed into a food product, they don't have that certification on them anymore, but they're raised following organic and biodynamic practices. So again, I'm happy to answer questions about that at the end. I think that's pretty much it for now. Thanks.
We have Kai Hinson from Green Rose Farm. She's in Waimanalo, is an organic farmer, and is also contributing to the Farmers Union, getting that established and supporting all the farmers out there who want to become more involved in organic farming. So let's bring on Kai Hinson.
Thank you. Thank you, Kokua Market and Seeds of Truth and Dr. Yi for organizing this event. There's a very small pool of female farmers to draw from in Hawaii and nationwide. I think I looked up the ag census. The last one was in 2012, and there was only 30% of the 2 million-ish farmers are women. So I'm really grateful to be here, and thank you all for coming tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, how I got into farming, about our farm, and then about the Farmers Union. So I was a child here in Kailua, but I spent most of my life in California. I went to UC Santa Barbara, and I didn't study ag. I studied global studies. And one thing that I was always passionate about was food and cooking. I loved food. It was a big part of my family, and growing up was gathering around meals. And so I started to try to grow my own food in Santa Barbara and found out how hard it was. So I started apprenticing under different farmers that were farming organically and nurserymen in Santa Barbara, and spent my summers working on farms in Northern California. And when I graduated, I had the very unique opportunity. My boyfriend's family, they have a piece of land here in Hawaii, and they offered it to us to start our own farm. So we're in the very unique position that we own our land and don't have to lease, especially here in Hawaii where land is extremely expensive. So we're very fortunate. So when we got to Hawaii, similar to Allison's story, we didn't know if what was growing on our property was a weed or something we should cultivate or propagate, so there was a major learning curve. And it was exciting in those first few months. We decided to do a permaculture design course, and we did it through the Asia Pacific Center for Regenerative Design. And anybody who is interested in gardening or consulting for people, they should definitely check out the Asia Pacific Center for Regenerative Design. They do a permaculture course that was amazing. We went around to all different farms on the island. I got to meet a lot of farmers who have been farming organically or biodynamically or beyond organically, we like to say, on the island. And it was amazing to grow that network and find people here with shared values. And so Green Rose Farm, this is Sean Anderson is my partner in crime and partner in farming over there. And he and I, through studying global studies, kept finding this connection back to food with political issues, economic issues, social issues, and environmental issues. And so when we started the farm, we wanted it to be a farm, but we also wanted it to be a community center that addressed a lot of those issues. So a few things that we do educational events on the farm. We teach people about gardening. We also teach people about food preservation and cooking and how to cook a lot of food that is all over the island, like ulu and taro, that is growing wild and sometimes goes forgotten. The other thing we do farm-to-table dinners, so bringing people to the farm, preparing the food for them, and getting them to try local organic food. We aren't certified organic, but we like to cherry pick our practices from the best of the best. So we use Korean natural farming, some biodynamic principles, permaculture, and organic. And we're really shooting for regenerative systems. So one thing that we saw that was happening was a lot of the stores here and nationwide food is getting thrown away. And so we pick up produce waste from Whole Foods 4 times a week, and it's amazing what's in those cans sometimes. It's pretty wild what gets thrown away on the island. And we feed it to our chickens, and that mitigates our feed costs. It closes that waste stream, and we make a compost out of it that then goes on to the rest of the property. And sorry, I'm really nervous. I'm not usually the one speaking in front of other people. It's definitely. But beyond that, we got involved in policy as well. So working with the Farmers Union has been amazing. I think I heard a lot about the Farm Bureau when I first moved here, whether I should or shouldn't join as a young female farmer. And I'm really glad that I became a member of the Farmers Union. It's a grassroots organization that's really out to support small farmers, small family farmers using regenerative practices. And that's really in their mission statement, which is cool. And I think that policy in Hawaii is a major issue, and that people need to be more active in their communities and getting, people say, I want organic food, or I want more people to be growing this, or why can't I find this grown locally? And it's really interesting to be on that side of it now and talking to senators and representatives that they're really shocked when they come to the Farmers Union meetings. They didn't think there were farmers here. They didn't think that young people are interested in farming, and it really blows them away to come to a room full of people just like tonight that want that kind of food produced here in the islands. And so I really want to encourage everybody to reach out to their representatives and get involved in their, in this political system that we have going on here, because they are here to listen. And all those doors at the Capitol are open every day for anybody who ever wants to go in or call. And it's really one of our missions this year is to increase our membership with the Farmers Union, because as soon as we're a state charter, so right now we don't have the amount of members that we need, but as soon as we are, that gives us a lot of clout. The National Farmers Union has been around for over 100 years, and so people in the Senate really listen when there's a big national organization behind a person standing in front of you telling them that they want organic farming in Hawaii and they want regenerative farming in Hawaii. Let's see what else. Beyond that, we do. I do want to mention there's a sustainable ag forum that's coming up that we're partnering with Civil Beat and the Farmers Union at Green Rose Farm, April 27th, and it's going to be a great event, just like tonight, talking about sustainable ag and the future for farming in Hawaii. So I wanted to mention that. Anyway, thank you so much for having me here tonight.
Thanks so much, Kai. I really sympathized with you because when I first started talking publicly about 6 years ago, it was really an overwhelming experience. But it was like, hey, where is anybody else, you know? And I was the one who came forward and I said, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm learning, but I want to help educate other people. And so the more you do it, the more you feel comfortable with it. And so I'm definitely not a public speaker, but I really would encourage all of you to do it more because we need to hear the voices of the women. That's why we have this panel today. We need to support the women in standing up and taking out that voice to people because we're the nurturers, we're the mothers of the earth. And through us, we have a greater understanding of how politics should be run, how agriculture should be done, what kind of food can nurture the children. So until we speak up, it's going to always be from the male point of view, and that is generally to exploit and to capitalize and to make money. And we're really having to change that now because it's a system that doesn't work. So I'm glad we got a laugh out of that. But the guys here, you know, you have to support your women in standing up and becoming partners with you because until that happens, we're really heading down a very slippery slope, and it doesn't look good for America especially. So I want to encourage all of you, guys and women, to come out publicly. When I first started in Seeds of Truth, we had many people helping us out, and it was really wonderful to see, but little by little, they all kind of drifted away and they got into farming. And now to ask them to come out and speak, it's like, I don't have time, you know, I have to take care of my farm. I have to go to the farmer's market. And so they're so busy with that aspect. But they were involved in the beginning and they saw how important it was with the educational outreach to the community. And that's why I continue to do this work. And I feel that it's really starting to pay off now. Because we're seeing in the legislature, even though we didn't get any bills passed this year, that there has never been greater receptivity to our message as women, as small farmers, as organic farmers. So I really do feel that our time is coming, and with regards to the GMO issue as well, people are taking us seriously now. You know, before it was just a bunch of crazy kids out there screaming their heads off, but now they realize GMOs and pesticides come together. And as long as they're out there, especially here in Hawaii, and they're being experimented on in open fields, we're running a great risk for our communities. And we have to change that. And I do believe the change is going to be coming in the next 5 years. So as long as we work together on this, we're going to see that new group of people coming into the legislature in positions of power where we can really make that difference occur in our lifetime. So anyway, thanks. So, talk about being outspoken. I really admire the next lady who's going to be speaking. Her name is Catherine Sheehan, and she ran for Congress this past year. And she really spoke her mind. And when I saw her at Kapi'olani Park, I said, wow, this lady's hot. So I said, she's got to come to one of our panels and speak to us because she's been working on labor abuse for years. She's been talking about homelessness. She goes down the city council, holds signs, testifies, and is tireless in the work that she's doing. And these are the kind of women that we need. We have these other ladies here too, but we have a woman like Catherine Sheehan who really, really will speak out for the disenfranchised people. So let's bring Catherine Sheehan up to the front.
Yeah, thanks for Seeds of Truth and Melissa for inviting me and having this awesome event. Y'all can call me Kathy. I'm trying to figure out in the back of my mind how to convey what I want to convey without totally depressing the hell out of you guys. It's really like a tough challenge, but I'll do my best. I'm the executive director of the Pacific Alliance to Stop Slavery. We help houseless families with children as well as victims of human trafficking. And a lot of my work dealt with labor trafficking in the islands, which is still going on, very prevalent, hundreds upon hundreds of workers from all over the world come here to work and are exploited for their free or very cheap labor on many farms. I went to a farmer's market on Thursday, and I was pretty upset because, we went there specifically to buy direct from farmers that are organic, that don't spray pesticides, And we only found one, and she didn't even have a whole booth. She just had a small 4-foot table. And she does use pesticides. They're not synthetic pesticides. And that was the only table that we had there at that whole farmers market. And I've seen an influx of more and more farmers that are either parading to be organic or not organic at all. When you ask them enough times if you do spray pesticides, what kind of pesticides you spray, blah, 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 they start getting a little bit more sketchy in their responses. And as somebody who's worked directly with labor traffic victims, some of whom have died from the application of pesticides on farms, I know exactly how they die, what it does to you, how long it takes for you to develop cancer or other serious illnesses. It's not a pretty experience to witness. It's fairly traumatic. And I do everything that I can to, though I can't publicize the bad farms that are doing these things, that are doing these practices, that are exploiting and literally killing these people, but not only them, but the land, the air, the water system, as well as the consumers who buy the product. I can publicize those good farms that are doing great work, that are not being exploitative to land, water, or people. And that's the best that I can do, unfortunately, because our system is broken. And it's very difficult to move change through either the legislature or through policy, through the agriculture system. It's challenging. So what do I do in response to the throwing out of a case with Loon Farms and Global Horizons that were the largest cases of labor trafficking that the U.S. has seen in recent times with prejudice, so that means they can't bring those cases again. They have to start all over with new victims. What do you do in light of that? Well, for one thing, it's taught everybody who's an exploited worker in this country and other countries, because they were watching, that the bad guys win. That if you ask for help, if you get the help of FBI, the Department of Justice, you're going to fail anyway. What that did was create a sharecropping scheme with the existing victims unable to get any sort of help other than get a green card. What do they do for work? They go back into this broken, corrupt system to make a living. And they get re-exploited, and they are being re-exploited. And they're literally dying of exposure to restricted use pesticides, which, mind you, it's an illegal use of restricted use pesticides. There's a black market for these things. I know because I confiscated 2 gallons of it, these restricted use pesticides, permethrin and Vidate. And I'm just waiting for the Cliff Suji hearing where I can tell him and show him that exactly what is going on with these black market restricted use pesticides, that hundreds of farms across the state are using it on crops illegally, without diluting them and without washing them at all. Some farms who are licensed to use these restricted use pesticides have to wash them 3 times. Well, the illegals don't at all. And this goes to the market, to your restaurants. So when we start thinking about local farming, we really have to do more to discern, well, what does that local farming entail? There are good guys, and there are a lot of bad guys. We need to think of local farming as Pono farming first, because if we just lump everybody together in this label, broad label of buy local, well, you're contributing to a broken system that exploits people, kills people, and poisons your families. So, y'all depressed? Okay, so some of the things that I do personally to, I guess, balance the heaviness of this reality and to, I guess, reify my faith in humanity is, they're small things. I started an organic garden at St. Andrew's Cathedral in the back of Davies Hall on Queen Emma Square. It's the only church that was actually invited to the islands by the Hawaiian monarchy, started by Queen Emma and King Kamehameha IV. A very sacred land to me as a Christian and somebody who loves the Hawaiian people and loves this land. We took that plot of dirt, basically, and created an organic garden which anybody can tend. The only rule is no pesticides, obviously, and no uprooting things without permission. But basically, anyone can go there and plant and harvest at will. It was made for the people. It was our contribution. It was the will of Queen Emma to do that kind of work. And as the chair of the social justice ministry at St. Andrews, that was the first thing that I did when I took the chairship there. So please go and visit. You know, you can go there anytime. It's a very special place. You can feel the mana around that area where there were just 2 trees and just pretty much splotches of grass. We transformed it and are transforming it. We are hoping to transform the entire 10,000 square foot area into a food forest, which is going to be challenging. But you can use it. It's there for you. The other thing I did as executive director of the Pacific Alliance to Stop Slavery is start a subsidiary fundraising arm of this nonprofit organization that helps the homeless and human trafficking survivors called Pono Soap. We sell organic, mostly vegan, ethically sourced and ethically made soaps and salves and laundry detergents, completely chemical free. As you may or may not know, there is a lot of noxious chemicals that consumer store-bought beauty products and soap products have in them to preserve them. It's really gnarly. I suggest that you actually Google detergent or soap, SLS, SLESs. It reminds me of the kind of pesticides that they use on the ground level for Whole Foods, not the market, but just your Whole Foods that you grow on the farm. So there's a lot of, really, I believe that this battle, this struggle, is a defining struggle for humanity. It's really a struggle between good and evil. And on the good aspect, the only positive aspect of this is that it urges us to come out of our shells and really define our identity, where we stand in this issue. If we're going to just sit by and let it go by us, wait for our children or our grandchildren to take up the torch, or are we just really going to do something now? Because really it's critical, and we are at some point going to be forced to take a stand on this because we live on an island, you know, and we're running out of water. California is going to run out of water in about a year. Texas, Oklahoma, Arizona are quickly behind, and Nevada. It's going to be an issue here in Hawaii, especially on this island, when our largest aquifer out by Pearl Harbor is depleted about 60%. And more and more development happens in Kaka'ako and Waikiki without regard to how we're going to replenish the aquifers here. So really what that's going to do is it's going to call to us to take a stand, now or later. If we do it now, we might be able to reverse these trends. We might be able to mend and heal the broken system and really come together as a community. Or if we wait till it's too late, well, I hate to imagine what that would look like. So really, the change happens, and it's all within our grasp. It's in our hands to be able to do something now, even in the slightest. And the thing is that you never know that the slightest thing that you can do can actually end up in something huge later on down the line. So don't give up that opportunity to actually affect that change. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Kathy. You know, I was talking to Gigi Kokio, who's out in Makaha, and he was sharing with us that when 9/11 happened, he was so dejected and so depressed that the only thing he found that he could do was go out in the garden and start working. Because when you think about all the things that are happening in the world, you become impotent, or you think you become impotent and unable to make any kind of difference. But in fact, you have your hands, you have your mind, you have your voice. And so if all of us were to start doing a little victory garden in our backyard, it brings so much satisfaction to see the bees coming around, see the butterflies flying around. It changes your whole attitude. Instead of thinking, you know, we're doomed, there's nothing we can do about it. When you start to grow that little plant in your backyard, you have a different attitude toward life and how you eat your food, whether you appreciate it or whether you're just going to continue to buy it from the supermarket. When you create your own food, it tastes better. And when it's organic, it's just the best. So, thanks all for coming again. And our last speaker today is Juanita Kawamoto Brown. She was one of the first people I had to come speak on a panel. And at that time, I didn't quite know who she was, but over the years, I've come to recognize that she's a very powerful leader in the community, especially in the Democratic Party. So she's now the head of the Environmental Caucus, and she's going to share a little bit about her engagement in the state legislature. Juanita?
Aloha mai kako. Thank you, Melissa, for inviting me again. Whenever I see you email me or call me, I immediately go, okay, she's going to ask me to say something one more time. And I never grow tired of answering her with a big fat yes, because we cannot stop here. As all these wonderful young women who I have great pride in right now to tell you that they're the future. You know, that is our future. That's one of the questions Melissa asked us to think about was, what is our future? You know, what are we going to be looking at tomorrow? And as a mother and a grandmother, a kupuna, and with a large, large ohana, with a genealogy that goes back to 1354 that we've been able to track just amongst ourselves as Maoli Hawaiian, I have to tell you, to see what we're facing today is one of the most positive experiences I've ever had in my whole life. And I've had many, many good experiences. I have ohana, I have loved ones. We've had a lot of good things happen here in our state, and Hawai'i is still standing. So what I want to get into at this point, what I can add and that I'd like to share is when I began this process back in 2010 about looking at what it meant to make a difference to help one small farm out in Ko'olauloa, Maili Moa Egg Farm, one of the last 4 commercial egg farms in 2010 that raised their own chickens and created the ability for their ohana to have a business and provide fresh local eggs. I started also to learn that there were problems happening within the government, that we couldn't get out there and save this farm who was now telling me they were going to go bankrupt because they couldn't afford the cost to continue to do the things they were doing. And one of the biggest costs that impacts small livestock farms here in our state is feed. If you can believe that, we import our feed, and most of the feed that we import is GMO feed, which was another shock to me as I started to learn the process. And I told my friend, I said, you folks cannot close. We don't have enough local fresh eggs. And we need your farm to continue. And their farm had been around for over 25 years. And yet, you know, they still couldn't compete with all of the import that was coming across the water. And so it was because of feed that was the biggest cost. And I thought, you know, I grew up with a large ohana that's spread out on Maui, Kauai, Hawaii Island, and Oahu. And all of them had varieties of sustainable farming, fishing, fish ponds, hunting as hunters in forests. And they all were able to take care of our ohana without having to go ahead and import feed. So it behooved me to go and ask, why are we only stuck having to import when we have enough things here to feed the small livestock? And that's all the compost things that we normally throw away. All the different things. That's what my tutu would do. She would use all this wonderful, what we call organic. To her, that's just sustainable living. We didn't have the money or the capacity to go out and buy expensive Roundup pesticide. Thank God. You know, we did it the old-fashioned way. We used the materials and the resources that were naturally in our access for us. And that's how she was able to grow the food and raise the chickens and raise the pigs and take care of my whole ohana. And my mother's family had 11 children in Kihei, Maui, where at that time it wasn't as desert as it is today. But even in those kinds of conditions, we were able to sustain enough to feed large family that lived out there. So when I went back to that commercial farmer and said, what's the matter? She's saying, they just keep, you know, this is the system here. This is how we have to get things done, Nita. I don't have a choice. You know, for the size of farm, the FDA, all these rules and regulations, all these laws that are out there that are created not only by our state, but by other states federally that prohibit a lot of things that my kupuna could feed us on and raise us on and still exists today. So I decided, okay, who we gotta talk to make a change happen? Oh, we gotta go down to the state capitol, is what I got told. I got a call one night from a good friend of mine. She says, Nita, they're gonna have this meeting with the Democratic Party of Hawaii. They're starting an environmental caucus. None had ever existed prior to this. We had a labor caucus and a women's caucus. All these different issues were just incorporated into different things. But this very small group of people decided it is time, especially when they started to face so many issues about creating food sustainability and helping small family farms continue to prosper and thrive in our state, to buy local and buy fresh. So I said, okay, let's go check this out. Who was there? Our famous friend now, former Senator Gary Hooser, was at the top of the list. He was the first man to open this caucus for us. There were others that were from various areas of the environmental community, from the Sierra Club, former and current Sierra Club people who were working for the Department of Land and Natural Resources in the forests, where the hunters and the fishermen go back and forth to try and find ways to continue to practice and with permit and reason and balance come out and do the things they want to do. All these fantastic people were there, and here comes Nita, no experience, very little political intrigue at all, none at all, in fact. The only thing that I had done politically since I was 18 years old, because my ohana made sure I did it, was vote. And even when I voted, it wasn't always with full understanding of who am I voting for. If my ohana said, vote for this person because he's always been there and he does all these things for our community, okay, fine. I'll go that way because he seems like a nice guy. Okay, so I start to talk to my friends there that I meet for the first time, and immediately liked where they were coming from. I said, I'm gonna tell you, I'm here because I'm kind of being selfish. And my selfish is because there's a small farm in Mōʻiliʻili who's gonna go bankrupt. And they're telling me they cannot afford the cost of feed. How come we don't have local feed mills? How come we don't make our own feed? I know my kupuna used to make their own feed, and we could feed a lot of people. I knew Hawaiians fed 1 million Hawaiians, and there were no import feed then either. So the answer came back, well, we don't know. Maybe you should go ask. And so this hui of people said, will you help us with food and farm sustainability? I said, okay, tell me what I gotta do. So they guided me and gave me information. I signed up, which I thought I was always a Democrat, but apparently you had to sign up and become one. You gotta fill out a form and say, I'm a card-carrying Democrat. And I said, okay, now what? And the next thing is, okay, we need to make resolutions and we need to create bills. The heck is that? You know, and the answer was, well, this is the way that you go ahead and we take it down to the legislature, and then the legislators, the elected officials, will then sit there and it'll go before committees, and the committees will go ahead and make decisions, and then you will have a resolution or a bill. And I go, wow, really? That's all I gotta do? Okay, I'm gonna go for it. All right. Boy, 5, 6 years later, I'm going to tell you it was not that simple, and it is not that simple, but I'm a very, what Hawaiians say, po'opakiki person, very hard-headed. So I'm very stubborn, and I knew that by getting out there and helping our community address something as simple as, can we please help save our local sustainable small farms. They are so important to this community. They are so healthy for where we're coming from, and they're my ohana. We need to take care of them. So from that moment in November 2010, I would spend every waking moment, and my husband, Mr. Brown over there, sitting in the room, he's one of, women can only be what we are because good people stand behind us and support us. So aloha and love you, hon. Thank you for all those years. But again, this man stood with me and looked at me going, oh my gosh, she's gonna take us down there, we're gonna have to talk to these people. And he stood by me along with many friends and family to start to question, why, what are we gonna do? And then we started making appointments, and oh my God, when you go down, you go through this process with the party, you have to go ahead and create a resolution. You create this resolution, you have to convince this small group, our caucus of 300 people. We wanna go ahead and tell the people through the Democratic Party of Hawaii and our members, please support this. Please support the production and the growth and the building of a small local feed mill in Hawaii. And I was surprised. The caucus immediately said yes. At that time, I think we only had like maybe 50 people. And then it became where we took it to our county, which is then we're talking about 7,000, 8,000 people at that point. And we did a good job presenting there. And they are all local people, just like you and me. And they said, yep, we're supporting. We didn't know we didn't have local feed mill. So definitely, if it's going to help small farms, we can do this. So now that got passed. And then we had a state convention. All of this happened in a period of 1.5 years. 1.5 years it only took. I was lucky. I was at the timing where I could actually do it. Typically, it might take 2 or 3 years to get it going. But I had a lot of support and a lot of aloha to share with lots of people out there. And they listened to us. They did. And so we moved it forward to our state convention, and 65,000 Democrats were represented, and they voted for local feed mill. So when we took that year, after we got that done, to the state capitol, it really made people's eyes open. I didn't come as one person. I didn't even come as a few. I came with a power of a party that was there that can make a difference, because most of those elected officials were Democrats. And so the ones that sit in those seats where they're committee heads, they are Democrats. Most of them are. So when we say the party, they're all staring at me going, are you kidding me? The Democratic Party told you this? And I'm going, yes. The Democratic, and they had to go check. Are you sure you can talk for the Democratic Party of Hawaii? Yes, I can. Yes, I can, because all the people who supported this said we could. So from that point forward, we finally got a bill passed where they are working today and funding small local feed mill. And not just, and we're specifying. We would really appreciate that you set up this system for organic feed, okay? Not just, you know, you gotta go back and forth, but they understood the momentum and the motive of we need organic feed because it's all about that. So I have great hope for the Farmers Union United. I remember the day they came to the Capitol, way back, 4 years ago, not that far back, and they showed up, and guess who was one of the first people we had to go and try and sit down to be heard? To even say, here is the Farmers Union United. You don't only have the Hawaii Farm Bureau Federation. There is another one that's focused on organic farms, local small family farming. The people that we got to sit there and ask for permission to speak was Senator Clarence Nishihara and Representative Cliff Tsuji. And if you can believe this, this is exactly what happened. This was Senator Nishihara's first year in. He had not been introduced to almost anything. Now, if you know Senator Nishihara's background, he was a former principal at one of the schools here in his district. The interesting thing was, at that time, I had gotten to meet him because of former Senator Gary Hooser. Gary and Mr. Nishihara were good friends in the past. And he went and talked to Mr. Nishihara on our behalf to see if we could please be on the agenda to open that legislative session with the newly formed Farmers Union United. And then Senator Nishihara said, yes, you can be heard. And Representative Tsuji said, no, we don't want to have them come in. They're not organized enough for us to. But Senator Nishihara stood by that. He had already promised, believe this was before where Senator is today. You know, so there's hope for some. Unfortunately, some of the other guys get to them before we can, you know, is what I'm trying to say. And it isn't that I'm going to tell you that they're all bad or they're all good. I've learned over the years of being there. I used to be very angry at them because I used to think, these elected officials, they don't care about us. All they care about is, you know, their payoffs or what have you that's going on. In fact, when you look at what they have to weigh, it is a difficult choice, and it isn't always about money. When you look at Senator Nishihara's district, he has a lot of farmers that work for Monsanto. This is a job issue. I am not a big supporter of that corporation. I am proud to say that to everybody. But it's hard to get them out if we don't have a solution to put something better in. And that's another thing I learned going through this process. If we want to see things happen, please think about what's the solution. Go out there and come up with these ideas that all of us can do together. Stay close to your community. Listen to all the different things people have to say, because you know what's right for us. Even more so than some of our elected officials, because they have to take the weight of having to balance one versus the other. But the one thing that always succeeds is people power. And like my friend Catherine was saying earlier, it's tough. It's hard when you have to deal. It can get really depressing and negative. But the one thing that makes me proud every time is I have never lost faith in the people of Hawaii. We are unique, we are special, we are trailblazers, we are innovators. All of us know we can make a difference, because I see it every day when I open up a newspaper. I listen to my friends tell me, we made it. Something else has moved forward to help the people. Just support people power. And how you do that is make a difference by please registering to vote. Please get involved in community groups. Share your mana'o with them. Don't ever feel like you're not saying the right thing at the right time or it's uncomfortable. It's never like that. Just speak with your heart and we will succeed. So I have a positive attitude and will continue that till my last breath, that I have faith in all the people in this room and all the people who live in the state of Hawaii. So mahalo for your time. Ahui.
Thank you so much, Juanita. I remember a time when I went down to the neighborhood board meeting in Makiki, and that was my first opportunity to meet Doug Matsuoka, who was filming it. And he was there because of all the young kids down at Thomas Square. And I got up and I started talking about GMO. And I didn't know what I was getting into, but it was being filmed by Olelo, and that was my first foray into public speaking. And it took about 3 or 4 months before a representative from Pioneer, Cindy Goldstein, came to retort some of the things I had said. But by that time, the board had become so educated about GMO that when she got up and started talking about labeling potato chips, and she brought in some food from Whole Foods and was going on and on about how Pioneer was contributing to the community, everybody saw through it. And somebody whispered off to the side, "She's so fake." And that really was something that touched me very deeply, because I saw that at the neighborhood board level, you really can make a difference. And so I'm encouraged that Roger is here today. And even though we think that, who wants to go to a neighborhood board meeting? That's actually where people start to become educated. And so in having that experience, you move on to the city council, to the state legislature, and you even start considering running for office. And I think there are some people here in this room who actually are very qualified to become new politicians, the new politicians, who will actually do good for our community. So I don't think you should say, "No, I'll never do it," because many times you'll see a surprise winner. And I do believe that in the next 10 years, we're going to see more young people coming forward, people with no political background, who are just doing it because they really care about their community, and they will win, and that's how the system will change. So I have faith that it is going to turn around. But you are the ones who are going to have to get out and vote, as Juanita said. You're going to have to talk to your neighbors. You're going to have to go to some of these meetings, and you're really going to have to learn about the issues. And I think from today's panel that we can see that there's great hope for the future. And so I do believe that in about 2 or 3 election cycles, we will see enough good people in the legislature and the city council that we will be able to make those changes that we need so that Hawaii can start growing its own food. So that ends our panel. We actually have some time left. So I'd like to ask any of you who have a question for our panelists to stand forward. And we only have this one microphone, so you need to come up to the front here, identify yourself, and ask your question. And we'll have some closing remarks from all of the ladies at the end. Anybody?
First of all, I apologize. I had been in touch with you a long time about joining this evening, and I hadn't followed up, but I did get to come out, and I missed our first panelist. So I think my question would be to ask for a summary and ask for what you heard from your fellow panel members that really resonated with you, that you'd like to hear be spread and shared out, because next week there's a panel that the North Shore Outdoor Circle is putting on out on the North Shore. Celestial Natural Food, the natural food out there, is sponsoring that. So it's similar timing and similar theme. And I'll be joining that panel, and I want to make sure that the messages that were put out tonight, that those get a chance to get out to the other side of the island where some of these agricultural issues are a little more in your face and tangible.
So the question that Doug is posing is, are there any differences between the way women farm as opposed to men, basically? Yeah? So if any of you would like to come up here and answer.
I'm not sure if I share values with my partner, but what I will say is outsiders that come to our farm, they'll come and say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, can I speak to the farmer?" Or, "Can I speak to the person in charge?" And I always take, I'm not offended, but I love it because when we started our business together, I had more farming experience, I had more business experience than my boyfriend did. No, I still do. He hasn't caught up. And so that is definitely an issue, I think, that a lot of women face in business, not just in farming. I did want to take a moment to say that the insect, talking about feed on the island was brought up right at the end. And one thing that we're doing at Green Rose is we've partnered with UH to research insect farming for feed production for the islands and looking at black soldier fly and the potential there. And what we've done is, they feed on waste, and it's different from a housefly. They create a larva that is very high in protein and fats. That's a great feed source. And to feed the larva, we're picking up spent grain from local breweries and using that as our medium, and it's going really great. And it's just another example of things that are going to waste on the island being upcycled and turned into something that is a valuable resource that we really need. So just wanted to pull that on there. Okay.
How much production can we eventually get compared to how we were able to feed the indigenous people, the Hawaiian people were able to feed themselves with 1 million people, compared to now where we're importing 90% of our food?
So the answer is an ongoing thought, okay? And the answer is based on the fact that government needs to fund back the things that used to happen in the Department of Agriculture, where we used to have a thing called statistics. There was a department there that specifically checked out how much are we growing, what are we doing to help it move forward, how are we going to expand it. It actually created the means for farmers to create business planning, so that they could know how much of a crop should they be looking at this year in comparison to everybody going to grow cucumbers, because that's the thing to grow right now and it grows the easiest, or are we going to diversify, which is really what the potential is. So answer to you is, the ongoing thought is, if we go out and we keep recommending to our government that we need to put these things back in play to give the farmers the tools they need, yes, we can feed 1 million people because the resource hasn't changed that much. Yes, we've seen a lot of our land being eaten up by development. That has definitely changed. And the method of farming that we've used back then in comparison to now has changed. Because the 1 million people, Kokua, they didn't just sit down and say, go make the food for me and I'm going to get what I want to eat because I'll just go grocery store and get what I want. Those 1 million people practice ahupua'a. They practice the ways that we all can contribute. We can all be a part of this. We do urban farming. There's so much awesome things happening today because of young people like this that bring them from all over the world to show us. You can use black soldier flies to feed the chickens now, and they'll have a way better resource and a healthier product for us to enjoy. It's just this recycling, which was, again, part of the ahupua'a. So it is my understanding from very good sources in our Department of Agriculture that I've trusted for the past 5 years that have shared with me, we have the potential to go there. But all of the people have to get together and push for tools to get done.
I echo what Nita said, but I'd like to go back to your first question, and I know you had a question behind Doug. as far as is there a difference between female farmers and male farmers. Now, I know for a fact, because I've worked with a lot of labor traffic victims, as I said, a lot of these farmers are women too. They're just not registered with any sort of like organization to be counted. And I will have to say that being a jerk knows no gender. Some of these women who have these exploitative farms do horrible things just as, really detached male farmers who exploit the land legally for profit do. I mean, it's really just it's a human flaw for people who are greedy to want to just exploit the land and each other.
So if you can come to the front here and ask your question. I think it's really interesting that I talked to some people who were at the farmers markets, and they were saying that whenever you have a night market, it ends up being not selling produce. It's just fast food. People want to go there to eat their dinner, but they don't want to buy the fruits and vegetables to take home and make on their own. So we're really becoming a society of convenience as long as we have this attitude that somebody else is going to make it for us. We've got to change that. We've got to start growing our own, and we've got to start cooking our own, because when you think about the ingredients in the food that you're eating in the restaurants and cafes, it's not healthy. And inevitably, your body's going to suffer. So you must grow your own. You must cook your own.
I would just like to thank everyone who's organized this, because this was like, I just moved here from New York doing a lot of this same work, and I just moved here in February, so this is like very close to my heart, and it makes me feel so at home. So thank you guys very much. I had a couple of questions just going through what you guys were saying, and I would start with Penny, and I will try to be as quick as possible. When you said that they're creating bees to fight off the beetle, what did you mean by that exactly?
They're just, like anything genetic, they're creating a stronger bee.
Oh, okay.
So they're working to create a stronger bee, just like we did with humanity. Anyway, they're trying to create a stronger bee. So it's like anything with your breeding process. You're going to take the best of the best, and you're going to breed them, and they're going to get a stronger bee that's going to be able to tolerate this environment that's being created for them, that they're trying to fight against. These pests that we're getting in here are not from the United States. That's something everybody needs to understand. The varroa mite, and the small hive beetle came from Africa. They've got African bees. They can beat them up. They don't care. African bees come at you, they kill you. They don't just stop. They don't sting you once and lose their stingers. Every one of those in the hive, 80,000 bees come and kill you. In Texas, they had that happen. This lady had her boyfriend and her, and they had small ponies. The bees stayed over, the pony jumped in a pool. They stayed over that pony and stung it and stung it and stung it until it killed it. The people got stung over 100, I think the wife got like 300 stings. The boyfriend got like 100. They almost died. So those are the kind of things. These small hive beetles came from Africa. They have no competition here. So our little bees are going, oh my God, but they're learning. And by being able to do this, taking these other stronger bees and moving them in, breeding them like that, then we're going to have ones that can fight it.
Got it. Thank you. And also, Allison, you were talking about keeping the food that you guys create. It's only like a small market. How come it's not able to maybe go to schools or hotels or other industries around your area? Is it because of policy, or like what are some of the why?
That's a good question. So it's not that it can't go to other places. Basically, when Bart and I started working at Puahoku about a year and a half ago, there really wasn't a farm. There was like a very small garden. Where the farm is located is about an hour from the major population on Molokai. Molokai has a population of about 8,500 people, and I think about 7,500 people live in one major town on the island, and we're about an hour away from there. So there's actually only one really small hotel. There's not a lot of markets on Molokai. So we could sell at some grocery stores and things like that. And we do a little bit in small kind of informal ways, but primarily we found that the best way to actually get our food out into the community of Molokai is through the farmers market. And we have partnered up with Food Corps on Molokai via Sustainable Molokai, who's their host site, and they have a food hub project going on, which is specifically to kind of, you know, create a food hub and get food out to the community. And so we work with them in small ways. So we actually have sold food to one elementary school through Sustainable Molokai. Selling local produce to schools is like a whole other big giant thing that just takes a long time. So I would say that, you know, one, the markets on Molokai are pretty small and limited. They're also fairly informal too. The economy on Molokai has a lot of like informal components, and getting food into places, institutions like schools is just a really big beast that in a year and a half, not there just yet. But do have a lot of hope for, specifically via Sustainable Molokai and a lot of good work that's going on.
Kai, you said that there was some kind of institution if you would like to know more about permaculture. I didn't quite get that, and maybe if you would like. Okay, yeah.
The Asia Pacific Center for Regenerative Design.
Asia?
Asia
Okay.
Pacific Center.
Okay, for regenerative design. I have part of that. And there was an event that you were talking about as well on the 20th.
April 27th was Civil Beat at Green Rose Farm.
Civil Beat?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a sustainability forum on agriculture.
Okay. Kathy, you talked St. Andrews? That's on this island, right? I'm like Molokai. Okay. And Juanita, how do you get involved with the neighborhood board meetings and like that whole pyramid level? Like how do you get involved? Like where? And these are all like questions maybe that we can do later. But.
Real quick, you can get on your iPad and Google Hawaii Neighborhood Board. And what'll happen is the city and county website will open up, and then you go ahead and you put in your address where you live, and it'll tell you right where you gotta go for the district you belong in.
Thank you, ladies, very much.
So I'd just like to remind people that on April 15 will be an Ag Day down at the state legislature. So I believe the Farmers Union will be represented as well. Before it used to only be the Farm Bureau. And fortunately, because of the work of all these people, that we're able to have representation from both sides. And so that event you mentioned was April 27. That is being sponsored by Green Rose Farm. Out at your farm?
Yeah, it's sponsored by the Farm Lovers, Farmers Market, Civil Beat, and Hawaii Farmers.
Yeah, so if you go to Green Rose Farm, they have a website and you can get that information about when the event is going to be. Yes, if you have any other questions, please come up to the front here and just have a wait.
Hi, my name's Ave, and thank you guys all so much. It's been a great panel. I have actually two questions for Kathy. You said something about not being able to disclose names of the bad guys, and I was kind of wondering just your opinion about transparency and different kinds of things like that within our local food system. And then I get constantly asked local versus organic, and I kind of have my answer that I give, but I'd like to hear what you say to people, because it's a big... Well, I come from San Francisco and slow food. I've been out here about 8 years, so we always said organic first and then local. And now it's kind of shifted to local first and then organic. And then specifically in Hawaii, I feel like we say local first. So yeah, I'd just love to hear your opinion.
Okay, awesome. I'm really glad you asked that question that I totally forgot the first one. But yeah, I hate to be a downer because there's so many really great farmers out there. But local first is really problematic. It's so problematic. If you knew what these people are doing to their workers and the land through the unlicensed use of restricted use pesticides, you would freak out. I promise you. We need to encourage the discussion. I'm from the North Shore, by the way. So I grew up on a beach right across from where several of these farms are doing their thing. And it just really upsets me because 20 years ago, they weren't there. You know, they've been allowed through the inefficacy of, with all due respect, if there is any, the inefficacy of the Department of Agriculture. The way that the laws are structured, it makes it impossible for the Department of Agriculture to actually investigate properly offenses of unlicensed use of restricted use pesticides, exploitation of farm workers, working with other agencies on the state level to get justice. It's impossible. So they will be actually set up to fail. And when you look at their records of what the complaints are, you see case closed, no violation committed. When in actuality, there are violations committed. They're just not investigating them properly. For example, if you make a complaint about illegal uses of pesticides on farms, they will call the farmer up, and one of their options for investigation is, hey, can you guys come in to our offices and show paperwork that you guys aren't using restricted use pesticides? That's a true story. And so they'll close the case file, and the complainant will look like they're out of their mind or they were erroneous. And the farm will look completely innocent. That's a really big problem. So we need to further the discussion statewide about what local farming actually means. Because there are farms here, let me tell you, there are farms here that are doing just as bad things as the farms on the mainland. There is one farm that we were responsible, my agency was responsible for getting a verdict against them through the U.S. Department of Labor in the amount of $460,000 in reparations due to the workers. It was Fat Law Farm. They're the largest basil exporter in this state. A few years prior to that, they were cited for using an illegal pesticide on their basil, and they were ordered to burn the entire crop and were fined. Okay? If you look at the order that was rendered against them by the U.S. Department of Labor, you will see elements of human trafficking throughout that entire order that they are not supposed to do. This is the farm that we complained against, first on the state level with the Department of Agriculture. What did the Department of Agriculture find? No violation occurred. Yet the U.S. Department of Labor busted them for a whole list of violations. What does the State Department of Agriculture do? Give them high marks for abiding by the law and doing a good job agriculturally. So we need to further that discussion of what is local. Is it harmful? Is it pono? And we really have to switch that paradigm to what you do in the Bay Area, what you see in the Bay Area, which is organic first and then local. Thank you.
I totally agree. I think that it has to be a discussion. What I like to do when I'm shopping at other farmers markets is not the one I'm at, is I ask. And I tell people all the time, ask. And it's true. I mean, Kathy shared some stories about people not being super transparent, and that makes me really sad as a farmer, because that's one thing that we're all about. All farmers markets are not equal. They're all run by different people on the island. They're for-profit businesses, so the farmers are paying to be there. So if you go to a market on Saturday, you go to the one on Sunday, they're run by different people. There's different rules for being at those markets. There's different, things that you have to be a part of the Farm Bureau markets. You also have to be a Farm Bureau member. So there's different things that you have to do for each of those markets. At our market, we pay a stall fee every week. And I'd like to really plug the Farm Lovers LLC, because they are responsible for a few of the markets that are happening around the island. And they are committed, everyone who's there isn't organic, but they're all transparent. And one part of getting into those markets is that the people who run it do a site visit. And they actually come to the farm and they make sure that the practices you're telling them you're using are the ones that they are using to an extent. I mean, I think that everyone at the market that we go to Sunday at Kailua Elementary School, you know, I hear people say, no, we use pesticides, or we don't spray, but we use chemical fertilizers, or these are the products that are grown organically at our farm, and these are not. And there is that conversation, and it's really exciting because when people start asking for those things, farmers say, oh, maybe I should be growing that. And it's really, I really encourage everybody to have that discussion because if you're asking for it, believe me, it'll be delivered, because I think people just want to meet that demand anyway. There was something else I was going to say. Anyway, thank you.
How can the general public find, possibly on the internet, this Farm Lovers LLC and other organizations that are promoting the organic food?
So Farm Lovers has a great website. You can check it out, and it tells you where all their markets are. The other, there's a Slow Food Hawaii website that is great. I think, you know, I remember what I want to say now, which is to support the Hawaii Farmers Union United, because right now at the Ledge, there's only one group that's representing ag at the table, and that's the Farm Bureau, and that's big corporate ag, and that's the farms that are spraying pesticides, and there are a lot of, you know, people that don't live here that manage those farms and come from the outside, and you know, they don't take care of the land and they don't take care of the people. And I think that when you have a small family farm here in Hawaii, it really, you know, the people that I meet at our Farmers Union meetings and across the islands, because it's an island-wide organization, they all have families. They're bringing their kids to the potluck. We're talking about, you know, all of these issues at these meetings, and they care. I mean, they are caring about getting young farmers on land. They're caring about using pono practices, getting pesticides out of ag in Hawaii. I mean, they're all dedicated, real people that care about their communities and are growing food because they feel that that's their way to give back and make change. So I really encourage everybody to reach out to the Hawaii Farmers Union on whatever island you're on or here, and you don't have to be a farmer to be a part of it. In fact, we need people that aren't farmers because, like Melissa said, you know, it's hard to get farmers off their land and into town and at the Ledge. It's really difficult, and we need lawyers and doctors and activists and anybody who cares and is passionate about these things, because we're a whole community of different people that everybody has something to bring to this discussion. So thank you.
So that's the Hawaii Farmers Union, and there's also the Hawaii Organic Farming Association, which I'm a member of. And if you can join those, even though you're not a farmer, to support those people who are working to bring food to you here in Hawaii that is organic and local and free of pesticides. So you can check out our Facebook page. It's called Seeds of Truth. And I'm going to give time for 2 more questions. And then we will have each of the panelists give a little summary about, 3 people. Come up right away.
So the lament that is expressed by people that are farming or would aspire to be farmers is that they face all these obstacles in Hawaii, you know, like land access, financing, water, and also there are the political and economic realities that they have to deal with. You two have been lucky to have access to land, but I was wondering, from your experience here in Hawaii and your conversations with other farmers, what are some of the specific things that you've had to deal with, and what could be done to make the farming experience easier for you here? And might you contrast what you faced here with what you faced in Massachusetts and California?
In my experience, I don't know if it's the number one, but definitely up there, challenges with, at least my generation farming or starting a farm is 100% access to land. I'm from an area of Massachusetts that very much like Hawaii, land is very expensive. It has some of the, highest real estate values in the U.S. And other than Bart, my partner, who just left, whose family farm has been in his family for a really, really long time and is a working family farm, pretty much, all of my generation of farmers back home, it's 100% inherited land. And those are the only people that can afford to start a farm. Or they're leasing land and, they're never going to own that or whatever, some other really unappealing thing. That's a huge problem. That's a class issue. That's an access issue. It's a huge, huge problem. I think that, where I farm on Molokai is privately owned. It's owned by an absentee landowner who owns 14,000 acres of land on Molokai and has a small portion of that in organic, it's all certified organic, but in vegetable production. Again, that's a unique situation. It's not the norm. So 100%, I think that is one of the biggest things that needs to be addressed if, local sustainable farming anywhere, particularly places with really high real estate costs, for that to be alleviated. I think the other part, what was the other part of your question? It was land access and... And just other, okay. And just other challenges, Molokai is definitely really different than Oahu. I don't know anything about farming and trying to sell produce on Oahu, but on Molokai, one of our biggest issues as farmers, for one, we are actually the only farm represented at the Kaunakakai Farmers Market. So there's probably 100 vendors at most, and we are the only farm. So any other produce that's there's a few people that are selling produce from their backyards. They have little gardens, a few really sweet aunties that, bring the stuff that they gather and probably get from their family as well. There's one other produce vendor where 100% of her produce that she's selling is shipped definitely from off island, and definitely see apples and all kinds of things that are not coming from Big Island. They're coming from all over the world, really. And so for us, one of the biggest things is being at that market, because that's one of the only places where people on Molokai have a chance to buy local produce. It's really hard for us to sell our produce in an economically sustainable way for our farm on Molokai, because you can sell it to Honolulu for more money. We can sell it off island for a lot more money. So really the only reason that we've been able to do that at Puahoku Ranch is because we have a wealthy landowner. And something that we've been working towards in building the farm program that we're building is trying to build a model that isn't dependent upon that. Because that's, really scary. Who has a billionaire landowner? And, that's not a sustainable model. So it's a huge problem. So there are a lot of farms on Molokai. I don't know the percentage, but most of that food is getting shipped off. So it's part of our goal, part of our mission to keep food on Molokai. We see the trucks. I do this little delivery every week to Kokua. I drive a little pickup truck with one pallet of produce to Kokua, and I'll be there at YB when just these huge tractor trailers are coming in filled with produce that is leaving our island. We have one little natural food store on Molokai that I think is actually closing down right now. It hasn't been open in about a week, and you go in there during peak avocado season on Molokai, and the avocados are from Mexico because they're certified organic. So I have a few different opinions about the organic versus local, because some stuff like that is bullshit, So it depends, and there's a big gray area there. And so to come back to that too, it's got to be a discussion. It's not just local. It's not just organic. It's on you guys as consumers to know enough, to know what to ask, to know what crops are treated in really dangerous ways, and to know what's going on enough, because it's not as simple as that. But for sure, our biggest problem on Molokai selling produce is we barely cover our expenses to go to the farmer's market with what we make there and come back. It's really just to get produce on Molokai, keep it there.
I'm going to have to apologize and not take any more questions. So I'd like to have each of the panelists answer either the questions that have been posed or give us a summary of what you think is the future for Hawaii and where we need to go, what we need to do in order for us to realize this vision of sustainable agriculture. So let's start with Penny.
Okay, well, my opinion would be education for the children and the adults. Sustainability, you're going to need to keep the bees. So if you have a small property that you can have a hive, contact me. We always have something available that we can put on your property, and that will help because you'll get pollination from it. Not necessarily will you get honey, like I said before, because the bees don't necessarily stay there, but if they like it, they will, and eventually you can get honey. And it would be really cool to have honey from your own area. That's what I do at my house. I have a hive, and I have Mo'analua Valley honey, and there's no other thing like it. But that would be my focus, would be. And then also, too, my husband is working with some other people, and we're trying to get legislature together so that if you have bees on your property that are wild, or in your property, in your home, in the walls, that you call a beekeeper first. You don't call the pest control people. You call us, you say, okay, can you help us get it out? And we will work with you, and we will take them out, and then we can rehome them. We don't destroy them. All of our bees are rehomed. So that is my outlook for the world. But Hawaii is such, because we're out here in the middle of the ocean, we need to make sure that we save our bees, because if we don't, I have a slogan, it's on my thing there, it says, no bees, no seas, no me. That's me in a whole nutshell. Thank you.
I guess, to kind of follow up on what I was talking about just a moment ago, I think that kind of with, the sustainable agriculture movement, like here, like anywhere, I think, anything you can do to create access to farmland, to support young farmers. There's so many people that are just passionately trying to farm. Those things are amazing. I think that voting with your dollar as a consumer is one of the most powerful and important things that anybody can do, and that's really what's going to be, one of the big catalysts for change here in Hawaii and anywhere else. So, educating yourself as consumers is just so important and really a huge part of the agriculture future in Hawaii for sure.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think getting young, and not just young, but new farmers on land is really important. One thing that the Hawaii Farmers Union is doing this session was trying to get on-farm mentoring happening to give new farmers sort of a background to draw from. Right now in Hawaii, to lease state ag land, you have to have almost $100,000 in assets, and that's super prohibitive. And then beyond that, there's a whole history of work that you have to show that you're not a high-risk investment. And so I think there's really an opportunity for high-risk loans to these new farmers, and I think that I've seen them get onto land and be super productive. Just as an alternative, I think that work trade is also happening. It lends itself to potential issues, but it's definitely happening in Hawaii. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
I'll be brief. So 2016 is when the same day voter registration happens. So get out there if you haven't registered to vote. If you know people who are not registered to vote, especially younger kids who are down with the cause, get them to show up at the voting booth. They could register right there, and that's how we can slowly change things.
I would like to take a minute to promote our hui, the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii, and ask all of you to please check it out. Google Environmental Caucus Hawaii. you will see our name at the top of the list. It's about getting involved. This is how we learn. That was the fastest fast track of learning I've ever experienced, just spending one legislative session from January till May, seeing everything that comes across the board in Hawaii. And if you want to understand these things and make a difference, you're going to learn all these things by going down there and participating. So mahalo again to Melissa and everyone here. Aloha.
So thank you all for coming today. I really appreciate your presence. We're going to have this on YouTube, so be looking out for our panel to be showing up in just a few weeks, thanks to Don Hutton from Olelo. And yes, and we're also going to have it on Olelo, so if you go to our Facebook page, Seeds of Truth, you can get the dates, the air dates for this particular program if you or your friends were unable to catch all the details. So again, thank you for coming. We hope to have many more panels like this. We've got a long way to go to educate more and more people. And please go home and start growing your own food. Thank you.